And actually, I think it was Dr. Holmes who said, if you want to see how much of an impression that you make upon the world, put your foot into a stream of water and then pull it back out and see how much of a footprint that you've left. Now, my mother tells me that when I was about 5 years old, I looked my father straight in the eye and I said, whatever it is that I do in my life, whatever I become, I don't want to be like you. So that kind of tells you what my relationship with my father, how that went. And try as we might, we just couldn't understand each other. And it seemed like it was that way for as long as I can remember. We had absolutely nothing in common, except maybe a shared environment. And the older that I became, the more resentful I became of my father. And I became resentful that he wasn't the father that I thought he should be. And my father was a simple country farm boy. He grew up on a farm in North Dakota. I, on the other hand, was an urban intellectual, or so I thought. My father was a fearful man. I never heard him once talk about any dream that he had, let alone show the courage to go after it and pursue it. And like many men of his generation, he was, shall we say, emotionally absent. He was unable to express his feelings because of decades of social programming that taught him that that is not what men do. And of course, you've heard me talk before, both my mother and father were Scandinavian descent, and they were Minnesotans and Lutheran, and so there was Zippo on any form of expression. I, on the other hand, was quite the expressive girl. We were millions of miles apart on everything, politically, socially, and certainly when it came to religion. My parents attended a fundamentalist Lutheran church, and to this day, or throughout the years anyway, of my ministry, they never heard a single tape that I did. They never read a single word that I had ever written, and they didn't appear to express any interest in that. We never understood each other, ever. And for years, I thought that that meant that we couldn't love each other. Because I thought, like a lot of people thought, many people think, that understanding is a prerequisite for love. I thought you had to get inside somebody's head and then figure it out, and figure out why they do the things that they do before you can love them. And God knows I tried with my father and my mother. We talked, we argued, and then for years, we just pretended that each other didn't exist. And then one day, in a Science of Mind class, my teacher at the time said two things that really struck me. Had a huge impact on me. And one of them actually scared me to death. It really did. The first thing that he said was, until you heal the relationship with your parents, you are not really a candidate for loving someone else. That shocked the heck out of me. I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I am so screwed here. That's why I haven't been able to attract anyone decent into my life. And that's why I haven't been able to sustain any long-term relationship in my life. Whoa! And then I was so relieved to hear the second thing that he said. He said that understanding has never been a prerequisite to love. You do not have to understand someone before you love them. What a concept. So it was simple. I was making the same mistake that everybody else does with love. You try and put the understanding first before you love them. But really, it actually works the other way around. If you love them first, you will grow to understand them, because love opens up the door and the way to understanding. So ironically, the one thing that I had spent years, maybe even decades, looking for from my father and my mother, with their love and their acceptance, I wanted them to accept me just the way that I was. And yet that's the one thing I was denying them. I couldn't accept their politics. I couldn't accept their religion. I couldn't accept their emotional limitations, particularly with my father. I rejected everything that he believed in because I just couldn't understand how he could be the way he was. The thing I was trying to get from him was the very thing that I was depriving him of. Unconditional love and unconditional acceptance, and a love that doesn't have any understanding, even as it says in Scripture, love that passeth all understanding. And when I got that, when I finally got that, I stopped trying to understand him, and I just started to love him, you know. And once I started that, from that point on, we experienced, up until the time of his transition, we experienced a very well-healed relationship. Now, mind you, I never got to understand him. He didn't understand me. And there are subjects that we just wouldn't even touch with a 10-foot pole. But there was a healthy respect for our differences, a genuine and authentic feeling of love in our hearts for each other. And I share this story of success with you today because I think that the stories of our lives are really about finding our way to love. I think that's what it's all about. Because if God is love, and if we were created in its likeness, in its image, then all of our attempts to know ourselves and to understand God are really about learning how to love. Love, I believe, is the soul's only assignment, the only assignment that we have. Everything else is secondary. Everything else is trivial. So from God's, the infinite intelligence perspective, it doesn't really matter what kind of a car you drive, or it doesn't really matter what kind of a house you live in, or how much did you love. That's the main thing. That's the only thing. In this life, the only important thing is, how much did you love? Did you grow in love? Did you learn anything about love? That's the assignment. That's the only assignment. So all the things that we think are really important are so not. They're just trivialities. Trivialities that we use to amuse ourselves while we're learning how to love. All the pretty, shiny little objects out there, the new cars, the new houses, the new clothes, all those trendy little things in life. We see those things in the store windows and we think we just have to have them. They're not our real priorities. They never have been. It's all about love. I have a close friend of mine who considers herself overweight. And the reason she considers herself overweight is because she doesn't look the same at 55 that she did when she was 17. It happens. It just happens, you know. But she's been able to attract this boyfriend into her life. You know, and this guy really loves her. I mean, he's so wonderful and it's great to see him together. And it's obvious that he loves her. He's gentle with her. He's kind with her. He opens the door for her. He listens to her. There's a concept. You know, he values her opinion. He loves her. But she's refused to have intimate relations with him. Because, as she said to me, Candace, I just don't feel good about myself. I don't feel good about my body right now. I'm embarrassed. I'm overweight. I'm just too embarrassed to take my clothes off. Now, I know for a fact that my friend has not had intimate relationships for over a decade with anyone. Yeah. So I said to her, what if this is just the way it is? What if this is just the way it's going to be? What if this is just the body you've got? This is the shape and the size that you're going to be. Are you going to live your entire rest of your life denying yourself love just because you don't think you look good naked? Honey, no one looks good naked. I'm here to tell you. That's why God invented Nordstrom's. Do not spend your whole life not letting yourself be loved over some ridiculous things like a fat cell. Please, who cares? Take your clothes off and go running around the house saying, "Come on, baby, get me, I'm yours." Because, you know, if you don't get beyond this, you're going to end up in life. You're going to get to the end of your life and you're going to have an awful lot of regrets. You're going to have to face your Creator. And when God, the infinite intelligence of the universe, says, why didn't you let yourself be loved? The only answer you're going to have is because I was 20 pounds overweight and didn't think I looked good naked. How lame is that? It's not about how much you weigh. It's about how much joy and love you let into your life. So my advice for all of us is to abandon ourselves to love, to let go of our egos, let go of our small limitations and our small estimations of ourselves, to let ourselves out of that fear box that we put ourselves in. And just for one moment, once in your life, trust that God made you perfect, just the way you are. It's perfect. Now, another misconception that we have about love is that Christian thing, that fundamentalist religion thing, that we have to suffer for it. I mean, have you even looked around to see the amount of drama queens we have in our area here? You know, we should change, you know, that affirmation that we do at the end, 2009. We could go, 2009, no drama, no wine. I think that would be better. Really. We see that the world is full of people and they just have no idea that the byproduct of love is joy and ease, not misery and torture. Somewhere along the way, we got confused. We started thinking that we have to suffer and crucify and hang on the cross for love. And we see it, we can see it every day on Jerry Springer. You have some woman sitting there and talking to, you know, taking abuse from Mr. Wonderful with no teeth and several tattoos all over his forehead. And when Jerry Springer finally gets around to asking the question he always asks, "Honey, why do you stay with him?" the answer always comes back, "Because I love him. Because I love him. I love him, Jerry. He buys me a 6-pack of beer every week. He drives me to the hospital after he beats me up. I don't have to take the bus anymore." Good God, that's not love. That's not love. Yes, love is going to challenge us. It really is, but it's not supposed to hurt you. And here's the truth. Your soul has an assignment. You're here for a reason, and that reason is very, very simple. It's to open your heart and to love. And until we make loving a main priority in our life, we're not living at all. We're just playing a game of trivial pursuits. Even your career is insignificant. Doesn't matter whether you're a mechanic or a surgeon. God doesn't care. God doesn't value one over the other. So why should we? And the things that we think that make us so important, so valuable to life, they really don't. Everyone can be replaced and everyone is, eventually. Emerson said that life is all about change and movement, that circumstances change every hour. In other words, spirit has no sentiment or attachment to past lives or what came before. It simply moves on to other avenues to open up love, new channels. Now here's the thing. If your heart is open to love, then God resides there, healing and blessing your life. But if your heart is closed, then Spirit, God, infinite intelligence, is looking for a way for you to open your heart. It's going to challenge you to open your heart. Or because it's looking for a way out of that limited life that you've made for yourself, that fear box. So we need to be way careful, because there's nothing so dangerous as someone walking around with a closed heart. It's a tragedy waiting to happen, and we've all seen it. I had a friend who learned this late in life. He was somebody known for his great wisdom, and he was well respected among his peers. But let's just say that he wasn't the most loving person in the world. In fact, he harbored fear and resentment and anger for many, many, many years of his life. And then one day he woke up in his 70s and he couldn't figure out how to get dressed in the morning. And he couldn't figure out or remember where the bathroom was in the house that he'd lived in for over 20 years. He was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and it eventually stripped him of every dignity that he had, every dignity that life had previously offered to him. And he returned to the innocence of a young boy. Toward the end of his life, he became so loving and so sensitive that he couldn't even watch TV because the violence on TV made him cry. I watched a 70-year-old man of towering strength and wisdom turn into a child who just wanted to hold your hand and just tell you how much he loved you. It was absolutely horrible and painful to watch this healing, and yet it was very, very beautiful. And having studied metaphysics, I thought it was way interesting that he got a brain tumor. I think it's because that God, the only way that God could get to his heart was to shut down his brain. See, your soul's only assignment is love. And if you're saying to the universe, I don't want to do it, we're setting ourselves up for big challenges. And if you're serving the universe by opening your heart and doing that, the happier and healthier you're going to be. The happier and healthier your life is going to become. But if you don't find a way to love, in spite of all of the reasons that you have not to, the worse your life will become, and the unhappier your life will be. It'll become more limited, more fear-based. So I guess it all boils down to a simple choice that we have to make every day. Will we love them anyway, in spite of all of the reasons that we have not to, and all of our excuses and all of our spinning? Even though we're probably not ever going to understand them, really, will we choose to love them? Or will we withhold our love until it destroys every opportunity for good we have, and eventually destroys even the body we occupy? It's really some choice. I think the divine intelligence of the universe has some sense of humor. You can grow or die. You can love or you can be shut down. You can move yourself forward in your assignment, or the universe will find some way to move you out of your fear box and forward into love. Now, I told you a little bit about my family and my father, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my cousins, my extended family. Thank God they don't have tapes and they don't come to our service. I've just got to love relatives, don't you? You know, especially the ones you can talk about publicly. I have, back in Minnesota, I have several cousins they consider themselves born-again Christians. And they do some serious loving about Jesus, let me tell you. And I'm a target. I got a big bullseye on me. And every year I get a Christmas card that's supposed to be all about the thing and remind me that Jesus is the reason for the season. Thank you for sharing. And one day I was up in Minneapolis, and one of them confided in me that she had a vision. You know, she was standing over the kitchen doing her dishes and kind of zoning out like you do when you got a mundane chore that you're doing and something you've done 1,000 times. And there she was, doing her dishes, and she saw Jesus. And it was like she'd been told in her church. He was a white man, of course. He had long hair. He was wearing a long white robe. He was sitting on a hill on a throne, separating with a staff the sinners from the saved. And when she told me this, I personally thought she needed to up her meds. But she was really all excited about it. And she was serious. She told me she can't wait for the day to come when Jesus really does come and he takes away all of the bad people and he punishes them and crucifies them and sends them all to hell. And then establishes his 1,000-year rule of love. Now, I don't have anything against born-again Christians. I really don't. I think religion is great. I think all religion is great as long as it teaches people about love and it's life-affirming. But I do object to people having God and evil. I object to this codependent thinking that tells us that the world is filled with evil and misery and that we need to be redeemed, and we probably never will be because we're so awful and we're such awful sinners. And so we're just supposed to sit here and suck it up in this den of horror that we live in until the day comes when somebody else brings love into the world. That just doesn't make sense to me. That a perfect intelligence that we call God, divine intelligence, creative power of the universe, can come up with such a diabolical plan. Doesn't make sense to me. Leaving us all here in some miserable place, waiting for thousands and thousands of years to be rescued. Maybe it's just me, but it sounds a little codependent. It sounds a little victim-y. And you know what? Here's the thing. We can't wait anymore. We can't afford to wait any longer. We just can't wait for Jesus to come. Because we are God in expression. We're the thing itself. Right here, right now. The world needs your love right now. You are God's outlet for loving in the world. You were created by a perfect intelligence and placed here at this time to bring love into the world. You are here to leave love behind, not sit around and wait for somebody else to bring it down to you. You can't wait to be loved. You've got to find some way to love right here, right now, between now and right now. Because the world that we live in, we can't afford to wait. Waiting is not an option. It's just not. And after spending 25 years in social service and over 7 in the ministry, I can't tell you how many people get to the end of their lives and the only regret they have is that they haven't been loving enough. That they don't want to be talking about Jesus. They don't want to be talking about the afterlife. They don't want to be talking about any of that stuff. They just want to tell you, and they want to tell everyone around them how much they really loved them. See, you know, at that point, at that final moment, at the end of our time here on earth, there's something within us knows that the whole value of our life comes from not from the trivial things, but how much we have chosen to love. Not anything else we've done on this plane of action. That's why so many people are desperate to communicate it to anyone who will listen, to anyone who will listen. And every once in a while, I think somebody comes into our arena, somebody comes into our life who's consciously living, who's aware of that, who's consciously choosing to love. And they're consciously choosing because they're exactly aware of everything we've been talking about. They're aware that life is short, and the only thing that's really important is how much we love. A while back, I ran into an article about one such person. He was a man that you and I have seen on TV thousands of times. It was an article about David Bloom, the reporter who died in Iraq. He was 39 years old and suffered a heart attack over there. And in the article, they showed an email that he had just sent his wife and 3 daughters, maybe a few hours before he died. And again, it was a heart attack, a very sudden event. And so I want to share this with you. Melanie, you can't begin to fathom, can't begin to even glimpse the enormity of the changes that I have undergone and continue to undergo. God takes you to the depths of your being until you're at rock bottom. And then if you turn to him with utter and blind faith and resolve in your heart and in your mind to walk only with him, the infinite picks you up with your bootstraps and leads you home. I hope and pray that all of my guys get out of this in one piece. But I tell you, Melanie, I'm at peace. Deeply saddened by the glimpse of death and destruction that I have seen, but at peace with my God and with you. Save this note. Look at it a month from now, a year, 10 years from now. You can't know now, nor do I, whether you will look back at it with tears, heartbreak, and a sense of anguish and regret over what might have been in our lives, or if you will say, he was and is a changed man. God has worked a miracle in our lives, and not to be trite, but that will set me free. God bless you, Melanie. I love you. And I know that you love me. Please give the girls a big hug, squeeze them tight, and let them know just how much their daddy loves and cares for them. With love and devotion, Dave. He was dead 4 hours later. My friends, life is short, and there's no time to tell the people in your life that you love them later. You have to do it now. The world is in desperate need of the love that you are holding right now. The love that you are holding in your heart. Please find the courage to let it out and start living the life you really came here to live. And so ends the lesson.